Welcome to
Hey, great shot.
This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel podcast network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. Look, the event that has captured the heart of tennis fans everywhere, the 2019 Laver Cup, finally in the books. Boy, what a weekend of tennis we were treated to. If you missed any of the action from that event, be sure to check out our mini break podcast where we went day in, day out, 1, 2, and 3, recapping all of the day's tennis, the winners from those days, what we saw on the court. But today we're going to have a little bit of fun, and I should start out by saying, give a big welcome to all of the fans watching on YouTube right now. We are live once again doing this show, and joining me on today's live show to break down today's Laver Cup action to help me give out some awards at our 2019 Laver Cup award show today. It is former Denison men's tennis superstar, host of the Wednesday Mini Break podcast, and the biggest stickler about time that I know, James Foster McDonald. Jamie, welcome back. Or I should say, hey, great shot. God, it's been a while.
Sure has been a while, but it's good to be back. You know, we're making these live shows a thing consistently. It's good fun, and this is going to be a good one. You know, I'm always a sucker for any Laver Cup talk, so it's good stuff.
And we should say from the get-go, credit to you for helping put together this idea. We were talking about our MVPs for the day, and as we often do when we talk on the phone, one of the tangents was, why doesn't Laver Cup have an award show? It already it capitalizes on. Yeah, I guess let's talk about that for a second. Why we thought this was a good idea before we get into the awards. I already see the fun part about this video aspect is now I get to see your face when you're like, Alex, this is going to be a dumb question or a dumb topic, so you're exposed as well. That's half the fun of this. But in general, I feel like an award show, because I think that was a really good point. I think given the way Laver Cup capitalizes on the team atmosphere, so much of what's intriguing and compelling about this event is the fact that we see these top players in the world respond to one another in a team event. They're teammates. They're playing for one another. The example we'll point to, I'm sure, many times throughout this might end up just being a Roger Federer award show, as always. But the way he's pumping his fist, you don't see that from him in your traditional second, third round match of a Grand Slam or, quarterfinal, semifinals of an ATP 500 event. These players are completely amped up, and it feels like an award show is befitting of an event with this type of atmosphere.
For sure, and that's why this conversation had a lot of different pieces to it, one of which was, hey, there should actually be an MVP award that goes to somebody after the Laver Cup. Call it a Cracked Racquets MVP award, just saying Laver Cup. And then also we should actually do our own award show. One of the things is going to be the MVP, but we've also got some more fun ones too. So now this is a good idea all around.
On the Cracked Racquets MVP note, in NBA, it's the Bill Russell Award, right? The Bill Russell MVP Award. I don't think it's what's the MVP trophy called in football? I think it's just Super Bowl MVP. I don't think it has a name, but eventually this Laver Cup MVP, because I feel like they will do an award show, it's a missing piece, will be called the Roger Federer MVP Award. Like, we all know it. Let's just be honest. But with that in mind, that gets into our topics. A quick rundown of what we're going to cover today before we begin. The ideas we had in mind, some fun, some serious awards. They range from MVP, LVP, all-tournament team, in which we're going to give out 2 singles and 2 doubles spots. But then we had some fun: best cheerleader, best coaching performance, best match, the most, which player after this event will this be most impactful for? Who maybe mentally, maybe it was just the experience to hear from the top guys. Who's going to come out of this event stronger, clearly, as they go down the 2019 home stretch. With that intro in mind, let's get into our awards. And the award I think we have to start with, I'm just going to call it this now, the Roger Federer MVP Award for this year's Laver Cup. Before I get a name from you, Jamie, I went back in history to set the scene. If we're going to do an award show, we're going to pretend there's some history to these awards. So 2017, I looked at it. That's probably, the first year of the Laver Cup. Roger Federer probably has to get the MVP, and that's probably the best single performance from any player. You look at what he did there, a straight set win over Sam Querrey. He won the clinching match over Kyrgios to clinch the Laver Cup that year for Team Europe. And then, of course, that was the year we got the first Fadal appearance ever, them playing in doubles. They beat Sock and Querrey in a third set. Last year's MVP, it was a little more sticky. Even though Team Europe won. I thought results-wise, Jack Sock had the best performance, 3-0 in doubles. He lost his only singles match on day one, so only worth 1 point in terms of most value to your team. He accumulated, 6 points, only gave up 1, and that loss to Edmund was in 3 sets. But obviously that his team didn't win. That one got a little bit sticky. And I feel like that was the case this year because when you look at the nominees, sure, Federer won his singles matches, but he lost both of his doubles matches, or maybe it was only one. I think it was both, right? He lost with Zverev, and then he won with Zverev. Excuse me, and then he ended
lost
up
with Tsitsipas.
Yes, exactly. So points wise, he gave up 3, earned 1 for doubles. So, but you can see the case for him. But then you look at a guy like Jack Sock, or you look at a guy like Alex Gruskin. I thought this year's MVP case not clear cut at all.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, my MVP is maybe as boring as it comes, but it's got to be Federer, right? I mean, not only just the wins that he got, I mean, beating Kyrgios and then beating Isner, but I mean, Kyrgios 10-7 in that breaker. That's a big swing that could have gone either way. And then, of course, the one for Isner, avoiding the clinch for Team World. I mean, such a pressure situation, and he just deals with it, comes out 6-4, 7-6, right? Like, this is just his event. It's his team, and he
won his singles match for them on day one to steal that early. Yeah. In terms of, value for your team, if the award is, how do you find the value in most valuable player? I think Roger Federer is the obvious pick, by the way. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a little bit.
Fair.
You look at what Jack Sock did. He's probably the runner-up, right? And it's the second year in a row. And you continue to wonder why Jack Sock gets the invite to this Team World team despite his results on the ATP Tour. It's because he's a primetime performer at this event. To get that win in straight sets in singles, and then he lost with Shapovalov, but still he wins with Kyrgios the next day, starts off day 3 in perfect fashion for Team World, getting them a lead, getting the team on the board to start the match. Just the atmosphere, when he's locked in on the bench, Team World is much more locked in. That being said, any other player, maybe Alex Zverev for winning his doubles match. Yeah, he lost in 3 to Isner, but then he ends up beating Raonic, obviously, for the clinch. But I think, again, we talked about all of those things for Sock. Most valuable to their team, Team Europe could be called Team Federer, and it would be justified because he is coach, player, manager, psychologist, all of the different things he needs to be. He is the most valuable player of this event.
Yeah, no, and that's why you got to pick him, right? Because everywhere you look, no matter what match it was, he had some hand in it, right? Yeah. You just said it. He had some hand in it, and even if he didn't at one exact moment, he was talking about it. He was locked in. He was worried about it, right? Like, and granted, part of that we see that because the camera's always showing Federer, of course. But I mean, it just shows you how much he cared. And like you said, when the big moments came, he stepped up to the plate. So I feel like it's got to be his.
I don't know how this would have gone. I like if one score it would be 12-all, but if Federer and Zverev don't get that win over Shapovalov and Sock, and let's be clear, Shapovalov put together a very good doubles performance in this event. Yes, they were the only match without a tiebreaker. They lost 3 and 5. But Shaq and Shapovalov and Sock, they had 10. I had to think 10 plus breakpoint opportunities in that match. And so for Zverev and Federer to fight it off, I mean, that was to go through day one up 3-1. Team Europe clearly needed all of the leads they could get because it was so close. So I just don't know how you go with anyone but Federer.
Yeah.
Our next category, we talked about the most valuable player. Let's go least valuable player. And again, I went back through time to look through the results, so we have a little bit of context. LVPs over the year were much more clear-cut than I think in this year. You look in the past, 2017, both Berdych and Querrey went 0-3. If I told the common fan that Tomas Berdych and Sam Querrey played in 2017, they'd be like, really? They were in the Laver Cup, so I don't think much is lost there. You look last year, I think Djokovic has to be the pick. Him and Federer lost in doubles. Djokovic loses in 3 sets to Anderson in singles. He was coming off of a dominant U.S. Open title a couple of weeks before. So much like Nadal this year, you can see there you play that much intense tennis to make the quick turnaround for this event is tough to do. But this year, I really didn't think there were any players that put together poor performances. You want to throw Fabio Fognini under the bus for losing to Jack Sock? Okay, fine, but it's 1 point, 1 match on day 1. I don't think that's the most consequential. So for me, I had a little bit more fun in this topic. Oh, another guy, I guess, tennis-wise, just that Milos Raonic went 0-2. Yeah. Sure, you could say that, but for me, the LVP's got to be Bjorn Borg. You're telling me in the history of the ATP Tour, we haven't had a more fun tennis personality from Europe that couldn't coach this team? Like, I get year one, the McEnroe-Borg rivalry aspect was part of the sell, but I think we're past that now. Like, I feel like, with all due respect, Bjorn, unless we're going to do a coach's sudden death double, a mixed player-coach doubles final, I think we can move beyond that.
Well, I mean, clearly here you're going to least valuable person then instead of player, because Mr. Borg himself was not a player in this. So good for you for squeaking around the rules here. But I mean, no, this is something that's so interesting. It's like, I don't really know what role Borg played that much. Gives a high five here and there, maybe says something, really not even sure. I mean, mainly it's just Fed and Nadal coming over the shoulder. I think you got to give it to Raonic here. I mean, he goes 0-2, loses both times he shows up on the court. Don't say but. No,
I did.
I mean, I don't know how you give it to anybody else.
So we're live, so I don't want to interrupt you because I could see how ready I was. I just didn't want to throw any player under the bus because I didn't think anyone tanked their match. And yeah, I make the rules so that I can break them. That's half the fun. For me, I guess on court, given Raonic 0-2, value wise 0-5 in terms of points, that hurts.
Exactly. 2 and 3.
For me, if it's not Borg, Patty McEnroe, my guy, get off your phone. Like, this is the Laver. Why anyone on the bench is checking your phone? Like, you don't need to see your Twitter mentions. What is Tony Godsick texting you, Fed? Like, hey, you got to be more vocal. We're trying to sell this product. Like, come on. Like, get off the phones. Enjoy the I would kill to be on that bench. So, come on, guys. Put the phones away.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. In terms of the V standing for value there, it is tough to see some of the value that he brought to it. But, once again, I think you said it perfectly. You really don't want to throw anyone under the bus on this one because it was such a great event and everybody was locked in. And even somebody who didn't have a great performance, it's not like they weren't trying. It's not like they weren't into it and invested and wanting to win for their team, right? So it feels ugly for us to, try to call somebody out.
Yeah, that's, again, why I skirted the rules. So I agree with you there. I think with that, we can move on to our next topic. This is going to be a little bit more complicated. We came up with the criteria for our all-tournament teams. I did not go back in the past, but again, Federer Sock would have a bunch of all-tournament team appearances. I think Kyrgios in 2017, even though he lost to Federer, was an all-tournament team appearance. Obviously, last year, Kevin Anderson may have been the MVP outside of Sock for, a dark horse candidate for MVP for Team World. So that's the sort of criteria, guys who are coming through in the clutch, winning matches that you don't expect, putting up solid points for their team every time. At least I imagine that's what we were both thinking. It's 3 days of tennis. It's not that much. There's not that much more of a criteria. But with that in mind, again, we said 2 players could be from either team. Let's start with singles, Jamie. Give me your all-tournament singles team.
Before we go into this, can you repeat between singles and doubles?
Yeah, of course, sure.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, that makes
Wait, should I say no? No would be way more interesting.
No. Too late.
No, you didn't answer yet. Let's say no. No. Let's say yes, because that doesn't do it justice because guys play both, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I think this is just about as boring as it comes here, but it's got to be Federer and Nadal. I mean, you got to say Federer in this. I mean, like, what else am I supposed to say?
So. You could make a dark. I sat here long and hard and really thought to myself, should I put Taylor? Sorry to cut you off because Federer we agree on, right? We can lock in his case. Refer to you're not going to put the MVP on the all-tournament singles team. Lol. As though this is serious, by the way, is how I'm judging this criteria. But no, I think he's a lock for the all-tournament first position. But so you look at then by points accumulated for your team. Nadal, only with the 1 singles win, he gets 2. No player on Team World earned more than earned more than 1 singles win, but Taylor Fritz's 3 points for his team on that day 3 to beat Dominic Thiem 5-7, or I think it was 7-5, 6-7, 10-5. 3 competitive sets, and the level of tennis, we talked about this on yesterday's mini break from Fritz. Such a high quality performance for a guy who, again, was the 5th man, 6th man on the team, but was probably the 10th, 11th guy John McEnroe called to get on the spot. That's as clutch of a performance as we're going to see. That also being said, I mean, Jack Sock got a win. Like, are we going to talk about
That's impressive.
how amazing that was?
So here's the problem, though. If you put Sock in there, then my singles players would be Federer and Sock, and my doubles team would be Federer and Sock. So I don't think we want to go there. But no, I mean, you make a good point with Fritz, right? Like, an awesome win for him. But if you start comparing the numbers, Nadal played singles on day 2, right? So points wise, that's a wash. Nadal gets 2. Fritz goes 1-1. He loses the 1 point, but wins the 3.
They're both +2.
Exactly. So obviously the 3 points comes at a huge time, and I think that was an awesome win for Taylor Fritz. And so I think you can make that case, but ultimately, if it comes between that, Nadal's 1-0, and it's Nadal. So
the other guy, Alex Zverev, who with that same math, 3 points earned in singles, but 2 lost to Isner. You could make a sneaky case, I think, as well for, we said Jack Sock, but even though Isner lost that second match to Federer, his win over Zverev on day 2 to tie it back up at 3-all, that was really impressive. I want to differ from you.
Of course you do.
So again, Federer is a lock. See, if I take Jack Sock, and then you obviously have Jack Sock on your all doubles team, I should have put Jack Sock as my MVP this year for the dark horse MVP pick, just to sneak that in, because he's the only guy I would have on both teams.
You wouldn't have Fed in doubles?
No. Let's transition to doubles. I won't cop out. I'll give you a singles pick as you're explaining your doubles. For me, I went with Sock Kyrgios, because even though Federer and Zverev's win on day 1 was important in terms of just getting that extra point, I mean, Sock and Kyrgios to win that match, get it back to 7-5. I said it when we did our day 2 recap. The round the net post shot Kyrgios hit in that third set breaker was a pivotal moment for Team World. And I mean, when I think of Team World, as much as people like to associate Team Europe with Fadal, getting to see Sock and Kyrgios play at these Laver Cups is just as much of a highlight for me.
No, I agree. I mean, I look forward to that part so much. I mean, it's a ton of fun to see these guys. Not only are they goofing around, but when they lock in, and they're just so good. And I sometimes, with all the craziness surrounding them, you just forget how good they are on a doubles court, right? At the same time, though, I mean, Fed, obviously phenomenal doubles player. How fun would it be to see
Fed Sock?
Yeah, right? Like Fed Sock together. I mean, come on. How do you not put that at this point?
Because it wouldn't be fair. You can't do it. But the thing is, I love Sock Kyrgios. I think they're the best doubles combo of any of these pairings. And I think Isner and Sock have been good over the years.
I'd take Kyrgios and Sock over Isner.
Yeah, the way they pounded returns on the Tsitsipas, particularly when Tsitsipas was returning, the way they targeted him at the net, the aggression they played with poaching and crossing and doing all of the things, the short angles, the fun stuff they do on a singles court in doubles, it's that much more effective. I love watching Roger Federer play doubles, but I just think I got to give the knock to Sock and Kyrgios. I thought their performance on day 2 was the most memorable doubles performance of any of the 3 matches. That
was a crazy match, and I will say I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see Kyrgios Sock against Fed Nadal. I think that would have been. That should be like too good.
They should force that, like every night 2 or beginning of day 3, just pre-scripted Federer and whichever other Nadal, Murray, hopefully someday Djokovic guy is playing that year versus Sock and Kyrgios. Like that's got to be.
Yeah, but the thing is too, it's just with Fed Nadal. Nadal's a great doubles player. Like obviously it's very different, but he's a great doubles player, and so those guys together is awesome. And then Sock and Kyrgios, we've already talked about. Like we got to have that matchup. Like we just have to.
The firepower of Sock Kyrgios versus just the love fest that is Federer Nadal. I mean, we'll talk about that love fest in a little bit. I don't want to cop out of the all-tournament singles team because I really enjoy this topic, and I apologize for listeners who see it looks like I'm looking off in the screen. It's because I'm examining these results as hard as possible. I'm going to go with Taylor Fritz. I'm throwing it in there. I'm a fan of math. My dad says my quantitative skills not quite as good as my little brother's, but I disagree with him, and I'm going to go simply by the math. He earns 3 points. He loses 1. That's +2. That's the second best ratio of any guy. So he's my pick. Nadal also +2, but he gets the knock for not playing the day 3. The win that Taylor Fritz had on day 3, the second most valuable singles win, or probably the most valuable non-Federer singles win of the tournament. That alone, because small sample size, but he's going to be my boost. And I feel like history will look kindly on me.
I get it. No, I think you've got – I totally – think that that's a fair case to make. Absolutely. The only reason I go with Nadal is because it's truthfully, it's Nadal. So like if you're picking a team of greats, you're picking Nadal, and mathematically, because you're the numbers guy here, it evens out with Fritz, right? It evens out with Fritz, and his record stays 1-0 as opposed to 1-1. But
and
that doesn't say
mathematically, by the
anything
way,
about bad on Fritz.
but mathematically, Kyrgios gets the bump over Federer for that all doubles spot as well, for that all doubles team spot, because he gets the 2-0, Federer 1-3 in terms of points, -2 doubles wise. So
yeah.
I guess
I blame Tsitsipas for that more.
Yeah, exactly. If there was an LVP of doubles, it was Tsitsipas.
Well, for sure, yeah.
Although he wasn't bad at doubles. That wasn't meant to throw him. I'm talking now purely math.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair. And I think it's interesting, too, when you look at Tsitsipas across this tournament. Like, he does play doubles twice, loses both times, plays singles on day one, wins 10-7. Honestly, not that impressive of a Laver Cup from Steph.
Yeah, but I like the way he embraced the team environment. That's why I kept him out of the LVP, because whenever you could tell he was a sponge when Federer and Nadal were talking, and to see that sort of intellectual curiosity out of a young player, that's valuable enough for me. I'm like, you get a pass.
Did you see on there were so many clips of it, but when Nadal was talking to Tsitsipas about how to signal in doubles, that was hilarious. He's like, dude, I don't know what you're saying, but you need to I need you to do this or this, because I can't tell what you're doing.
For a video, I'm putting up a closed fist versus an open fist. He's like, you put in a finger, you're moving, and Tsitsipas was like, what?
Yeah, that was so funny. Yeah, that also. It just cracked me up, because there was like a running joke when I was playing at Denison. There was a Greek kid on the team as well, and he just had no idea how to play doubles. He would try and do the signals, and nobody knew what in the world he was talking about. And it just reminded me of that, and it was crazy. Just cracked me up. But yeah, that was a gold moment on tennis Twitter for sure.
We started to do audible signals as well on returns. I would just, whenever I would say, because I say stupid stuff. I almost swore there. I was going to say stupid. I'm not stupid poop. Often. And so I would talk to Rothman, and when I would start saying something really ridiculous, he would know, oh, go down the line here, and because that would be our verbal cues. But yeah, that's half the fun, and that's our way we'll transition. Just to recap real quick: MVPs Federer for both of us, LVPs undetermined, but I would say either Phones or Bjorn Borg. Player wise, I think we agree Raonic. All tournament teams, I have Federer and Fritz on my singles. You have Federer Nadal for your singles. All tournament team doubles, I have Kyrgios sock. You have Federer sock. We talk about these bench interactions. That's how we're going to get into our next topic. Best cheerleader, because you can't talk about Laver Cup without the interactions between these players. We've seen on social media all weekend long, Tennis Channel. I love them. They are our beautiful podcast network hosts. We are such fans of them. They were all in on promoting the Nadal-Federer relationship. Anytime Federer even, rubs shoulders, rubs elbows accidentally, they're walking towards the bench and they knock booties. That's, we're getting the close-up of it. It's turning into a GIF on tennis Twitter. But we had more than that. It's Fognini in the press conference being shocked when Zverev's speaking German. It's all of these guys on the bench interact. Dominic Thiem getting excited. You hear Sasha Davai from Stefanos Tsitsipas over the film. You see Jack Sock firing arrows and mimicking Milos Raonic forehands. All of these different things. So that gets us into our next topic. Best cheerleader. Jamie, before you give me a name, who are the people you considered?
This one's tough. I mean,
the toughest category, I would say.
This is very difficult because, I don't know, especially when you look at that Team World side, I feel like they've got a lot of good candidates here. In very different ways. Of course, you've got Sock, who's always jumping around doing something goofy. You've got Isner, he'll get up for just about anything. Kyrgios, he goes crazy. He'll be jumping up and down. These Team World guys were doing everything. And you didn't quite have the same vibe with Team Europe, right? You had some guys who were a little more reserved. I feel like it kind of went in and out, right? Like sometimes Zverev was pumped up, but a lot of times he was just sitting there. Same with Fognini. He was just kind of sitting there sometimes. I think you got to consider Fed and Nadal in this. I would probably say, I don't know, I would give a slight edge to Federer. I don't know why. That's just in my head as a cheerleader. I think I saw at least more clips of him. Maybe the TV and the camera crews were just, painting it more favorably for him. But ultimately, though, with the cheerleading section, I think you got to go with somebody on Team World. It's got to be either Sock or Kyrgios. Yeah,
see, it's so hard to not pick Sock, Kyrgios, Nadal, Federer for all of these categories, and I've really tried my best not to. But Yeah, there's a reason they're the faces of their teams. These are the guys who are spiriting the action. At one point, I think Sock in the doubles match on day 3 was getting angry with his bench. He's like, guys, where are you at? So I think Team Worldwide, the thing is, a locked-in Kyrgios is locked in. Sneak candidate here, if this was Vegas, he would have been plus 750 going into the weekend. Johnny Mack gets fired up on the bench. He is in on every point. He's talking to each of his players, talking through all the points. You mentioned it yesterday, the way he was talking to Fritz and working with him to play serve plus 1 tennis play, but with variety. The way he was talking to Raonic about picking your spots in doubles, the way he's coaxing Kyrgios and Sock to attack. That's best coaching, sort of, and that's our next category. But it was also, every winner, he's up, he's fist pumping, he's cheering, he's doing, looking at his bench for reactions as well and joining in with them. It was all of these different things. So he was pretty good. I mean, Federer, Nadal. Here's the thing. If we weren't on the live video, I'd be swearing right now. But quack, quack, quack. The things we're hearing from Federer, he's swearing. Brett Haber's like, sorry, we didn't expect that. How do you not love that? So
yeah, that's good.
I don't know as a tennis player if hearing Federer swear while trying to encourage. I don't know if there's anything else in the tennis world that could cheer you up more. So by proxy, it probably has to be swearing Federer, but Sock doing Raonic forehand and backhand impressions and mimicking the guys. Who is he funny? I think it was Shapovalov's one-handed backhand where he was just swinging away, and it was really Sock dark is probably my number 2, but I got to go with Federer again.
All right, fair enough. I feel like it's. I mean, yeah, I guess you're just picking an individual, but I feel like with the cheerleading, you got to pick somebody off Team World.
Which bench? This isn't one of our categories, but we'll do a quick segue here. Which bench would you rather be a part of?
Oh, Team World. No
really?
question.
You don't want Federer, Nadal just with you at all times? Just I don't even care if we're not as hyped.
But see, that's such a cop-out because it's oh, yeah, Fed and Nadal, they're awesome. At that point, you're just picking it because of the individuals, not because of the bench mentality. What
about the chance to hang with Jordan Thompson all weekend?
Team World bench mob with the Jordan Thompson mustache. I mean, how do you not pick that? Come on. No, Team World, phenomenal bench mob. You got to love that. Good. I don't know how you're picking the red here.
I mean, the thing I like the most is how Kyrgios crosses sides. It would make me so angry if I didn't get to switch sides with my player on changeovers, especially in third set breakers. And Kyrgios was just like, man, F that. I'm going to the other side.
He ran. Isner did it too once. Man, I really should have shaved the Jordan Thompson mustache in for the day. That is a missed opportunity.
Dude, you don't get to be Jill Simone and Jordan Thompson. That's just not fair.
Fair enough, but I could do it.
It's really tough in terms of which bench I'd rather be on. Team World is fun, but as a tennis nerd, I don't know how I don't say Federer, Nadal. I would take serving tips from Raonic, and I would love Coach Mack.
Yeah.
I'll take Team Europe just to be different from you. But with that in mind, we started to talk about a little bit our next category, best coach, and this fits right in there with the cheerleading, with the social media aspect, because so much of the joy of this is, again, seeing these players bounce ideas off one another. These are some of tennis' best minds. Federer and Nadal, not only 2 of the greatest players, if not the 2 greatest players, men's tennis players ever, but 2 of the greatest tennis minds as well. The way they dissect opponents, the way they can attack in a variety of ways. And we got to see them see them interact with the next generation of hopefully greats in Alex Zverev, in Stefanos Tsitsipas, the way they were coaching them not only on a doubles course from things as small as signals, but just to Alex Zverev talking with Nadal during the Raonic match, him saying, hey, you got to target the Nadal back or the Raonic backhand, and Nadal saying, well, I can't do that every point because then I can't do it on the big points because he'll see it coming. I mean, it's these little details, these little aspects, and then obviously Federer swearing and pumping them up. That's why, we opened up this category for best coaching performance, not just the McEnroes or Borg, or I think Enquist is the assistant on Team Europe. But Jamie, your best coaching performance for the weekend. If you give another award to Federer, we may have to just stop now.
Yeah. Wait, didn't you just give the last award to Federer?
Not yet. Yeah, I've given a lot.
I'm pretty sure you have. No, I mean, that's not who I was going to say. I think that's certainly a good pick because that is awesome, especially the swearing fed pump up. Like, man, how do you not? I don't know. How do you not get inspired by that, right? But I mean, ultimately for me, I don't know. The coach of this, regardless of all the players interacting and whatnot, it's got to be McEnroe. I just think it does. I mean, he did a phenomenal job. Of course, he was in charge of, setting a lot of things up for Team World and technically being the face of that, and the fact that he was the coaching role. Man, the instruction that he was giving and the general advice he was giving on every changeover, I thought it was so good. And he got people across the finish line or kept them very close in matches that otherwise, on the tour, I don't think you expect those sort of results. And granted, there's a ton of other factors there, in a lot of these matches. Maybe they wouldn't be the same results on the tour because there's no team dynamic, the pressures are different, what have you. But I mean, the way he coached, especially Isner against Zverev, I thought that was a phenomenal coaching performance. So maybe you circle that one potentially as an individual performance. Overall, though, I think McEnroe was just doing a phenomenal job for Team World and keeping them in matches. And honestly, it was fun to see him too. It was almost so obvious, some of the things he was telling them. It was just an obvious sort of portrayal of what he would be doing, right? The pressure he was applying by going to the net and by attacking in that regard. He was able to have these different players do that and execute on it, and I think that was awesome.
This will get us in trouble, I'm sure, and you hate to talk about the applications of Laver Cup to the ATP Tour day to day, but how is this not an open endorsement for on-court coaching? And you say it's no longer just man on man, this person problem solving for themselves. If in my opinion, if you can get better tennis out of someone by changing a rule, I want to see the best product at all times. And if I can get better tennis out of two players because they can hear from their coach the entire match, that to me is a net positive. But
is that also what you say about steroids?
Yes. But that's a conversation for another time. Let's not do this now. But
sorry, that's
do we know they're not blood doping already? How sure are we?
That's on me.
Yeah, exactly.
Get into that rabbit hole.
Yeah, not now, Jamie, not now. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah. But from the mental aspect as well, just the fact that they could all turn on the sideline and you see John McEnroe with a fist pump after every winning point or clapping after every loss point. I think the dark horse candidate for this category is John Isner, who was just such a steady presence on Team World. He is clapping and pumped up for all of these matches. For McEnroe, 9 of the 12 matches went to third set breakers. And given that his team has less skill, I think that is a testament to them. The fact that all but one of the matches features some form of tiebreak. Again, they're keeping all of these things close. But I cheated once again in this category. I think just the combination of Fadal, given that it's open coaching from these players, I mean, Federer and Nadal are locked in at all of these matches, and they're giving multiple perspectives about multiple different things. And with that combined tennis IQ between the two of them, I mean, Team Europe is getting damn good coaching.
Yeah, and I think I got to give a shout out to Kyrgios here too.
Yeah,
because sure. Especially, I mean, it was so cool to see Kyrgios, someone who just gets criticized so much for, not caring, not being locked in matches. To see him actually break down a match to try to help out a teammate was, I don't know, it was kind of surreal, right? He was okay, you need to do this. To see the analytical presence that he actually possesses, and then was also using that to help somebody else on Team World. I think that part was awesome. And, there were a lot of times where McEnroe and Kyrgios were coaching somebody. You saw that a ton in that Fritz match, for example. They helped him get across the line, not only bouncing ideas off him, but, being the reassurance, being the people pumping him up. And, Kyrgios, of course, comes in with something lighthearted as always, because he knows what those players need in the certain times. And that's an important aspect of coaching too, right? So it's easy to say Fadal for sure because, yeah. I mean, if you're coming on a changeover, how do you not want to talk and hear what Federer and Nadal have to say? Because you're oh, well, they know. But at the same time, I think you got to give some credit to Kyrgios and Mac.
No. Yeah, without question. I thought all of these guys were very impressive. We talked about Milos Raonic and the serving advice he gave to Fritz earlier as well. So that doesn't bear repeating. But for me, I'll probably give the slight edge to Fadal over McEnroe. But it's an either or. I would accept either answer. But all right, last two categories. Our last award. Best match of the tournament. Each of the 12 matches compelling for their own reasons. You really could make a case for all of them. We were talking on the phone when we were planning this award show, and I gave you the hottest takes that, I honestly think good doubles is better than good singles. And when you're seeing the best, and I said that in a fake voice. It was my take. I don't know. I think I just did an impersonation of myself. But when I'm talking, I said to see these guys who have, with all due respect, the Bryans, all the great doubles players on tour. I'm not trying to disrespect them, but these are the best players in the world, and a lot of them have the best skills in the world. And just to see these all come together in a way, because of the pace of doubles, the strategy that goes behind it, it's very different than singles. The reactions you get to see, there's more, it feels like improvisation. There's less relentlessness, less physicality, more touch, more grace, more spontaneity. So that was the reason behind that hot take. I've thought about it a little more. We're not going to get into that, much like we're not going to get into steroids in tennis right now. But you talk about the best match, and that's my way of saying many matches could make a case. I narrowed myself down to 3 choices, and I'm curious if you agree with these. I had Fed Kyrgios singles. I thought that was a candidate.
It's got to be.
I thought Zverev Raonic, just given the moment, just given that it was everything on the line, the background behind Alex Zverev's season this year, to see him in that scenario, plus Milos Raonic, who didn't play the U.S. Open in that scenario. And then my other one was Nadal Tsitsipas versus Kyrgios for all. I mentioned the around the net post enough times now, but just the level, the intensity of that match, it felt like a turning point in the moment for Team World. And obviously that they went up and won the next 2 matches after as well speaks to why it was a momentum turning point. I have not yet made my decision, so buy me some time and tell me your choice.
I mean, look, so if we're giving it a grouping, if I'm going out of what you just said, personally, I would swap out the Zverev Raonic for the Team Fritz match.
Sure.
I thought that was a great match. I mean, look, not only were the sets close and it goes to the third set breaker, but just so much on the line, and the fact that Fritz was able to come out on top. And honestly, the quality of tennis was just really, really high. And so I loved the way that those points were breaking out each and every time. And so I think you got to give that one. But for sure, your doubles pick, and for sure, Kyrgios Fed. Those deserve to be in that conversation.
If you had to pick one, I would. I'm a slappy for doubles. I gave the whole Impassioned All Doubles tournament team to Kyrgios Sock, so it would be remiss of me not to. Oh, I lied. I had Fritz's team on my list. I see it here. It was my 4th match. I swear, you've watched my hands. I haven't been typing.
Well, of course, yeah. You can't just list 4, because then I'll list 5.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, I got to give you some room to maneuver. Fritz's team does make a sneaky good case. I'm not going to put Zverev Raonic, because despite the scene, it really wasn't that entertaining tennis. Milos Raonic, you know exactly what you're going to get. Fed Kyrgios was sublime. That was a great match. Was really good stuff. But I'm a double slappy. I gave you my hot take for a reason. I'm going to stick with Kyrgios Sock over Nadal Tsitsipas as my match of the tournament.
I mean, I think it's fair. I think that's very fair. That was a phenomenal match. I think probably for me, just because you get to throw the day 3 action in there. Oh God, but the Isner Sock over Fed and Tsitsipas, if you're talking about doubles, 10-8 on day 3 for 3 points. That's another great pick. I don't know. I still think I got to.
Yeah, but for the same reasons, the same reason, that's fair. The same reasons Raonic's match doesn't get it for me versus Zverev. A lot of big serves with John Isner. It still had the spontaneity and fun of doubles, but I liked the dynamic of Kyrgios Sock the most. I thought it was the most intriguing match. Yeah, sneaky candidate here, Sock beating Fognini, just because to see how that match transpired was what is going mind blowing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was very cool. I don't think you can call that one the best match of the tournament by any stretch, but.
Maybe the most fascinating result.
Yeah, that's fair. I think your Sock doubles pick, I think that's fair. I'm still sticking with Team and Fritz, though.
All right. Well, the reason I bring up the Sock Fognini match is because our last category, one that we forgot to prepare Westhoff with, but one we wanted to mention as well. There's a lot of talk. Again, we've mentioned this throughout our discussions of the Laver Cup. It's a glorified exhibition, right? It matters, but not really. There's now some head-to-head implications and total record implications, but not, no rankings points. Does it really matter? Who knows? Well, I'm curious, my question to you, again, to see a Jack Sock get a singles win in this scenario, the success he played with in doubles, despite the fact that he still does look like he's 2 to 3 months away from being back in his best shape, to see John Isner come out on the court still rehabbing from injury and play, albeit third set tiebreakers, but a good match against Zverev where he wins, and then a good loss in straight sets to Federer. A Milos Raonic coming back from injury. A Denis Shapovalov who does great at Winston-Salem, great at the U.S. Open after a pretty miserable 2019 by his standards, to put together the two good performances he did. On the flip side, Dominic Thiem, who still looks a little bit lost for a little bit more weary than he did earlier in the year. The category I wanted to end with was most impactful. Who, the 2019 Laver Cup was most impactful for which player for you? Who will, and I, again, to our listeners, not to preface it, and I'll let you talk here. I'm sorry, Jamie, but what when we say most impactful, can you again try and explain to the listener what we mean?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you and I have a little bit different understanding, but I think for me, at least when I'm answering this question, I'm talking about who is going to be able to take the most away from this Laver Cup experience, have it translate into their career and, the rest of the season and the seasons to come on the tour. And so for me, that player has got to be Taylor Fritz. I think for a lot of reasons, and I'll try and narrow them down as much as I can. I think, first of all, he's just so young. Right. And I mean, he's only 21. And I think that's maybe a reason you would think to put someone like Zverev in this category, because he clinches. But look, Zverev already had that experience. He clinched for Team Europe last year. And at least honestly, thus far, it doesn't seem like that impacted the other tour results that much. I mean, we haven't seen a phenomenal 2019 out of Zverev. So I feel like Fritz gets a bit of an edge in that category simply because Zverev's kind of already been there, done that. With Fritz, though, you could tell just how much this meant to him. Outside of the match itself, he's like, man, I want to be at Laver Cup next year, right? That's one of the first things he says. And so to see that sort of, I don't know, hate to say impact again here, but to see the impact that the event had on him, I can only imagine what that'll mean in terms of his tour results. Also, just generally speaking, the confidence after coming out and beating Thiem, the number 5 player in the world, on such a big stage when you care that much. And, he said it in a press conference, like, man, I didn't want to let anybody down. So the fact that he was that emotionally invested in it, had that much pressure, so much was on the line for him, and he still came out and beat the number 5 player in the world, something that's not expected on paper of a player at his caliber. Like, I feel like you got to walk away with a ton of confidence coming out of that.
I think all of that stands. I think another obvious guy you could circle is Jack Sock, for all the reasons we discussed. It just is, despite all of his struggles, this is a reminder you belong with this group of people. You can compete with them at the highest level in the biggest moments. No, it's not best of 3 sets even. It's not best of 5 sets, but with proper time, with the if he gets back on the professional training path that we've seen from him before, he belongs here. He can return to the level we saw from him in 2017 when he broke the top 10, for the first time in his career, when he won a Masters singles title. I think Zverev, for the reasons you mentioned as well, but a dark horse candidate, I would say, for this category, Stefanos Tsitsipas, who, did he have the best performance on the court? Not really. But for a guy who felt a little lost at this point of the year, doesn't have the successful hard court end of season run that we expected, given how good he was earlier in the year. For a guy who has put so many matches on his body, again, to see the way he responded, not only to the atmosphere, but to get to play, listen to, learn from the game's greats, you can just tell this is a guy who loves the game of tennis, who's fascinated in the sport, and who talked in his press conference of just getting the chance to soak in Federer and Nadal's experiences, their lessons, was so valuable to him. And so I think this could be a very impactful moment in his career, just to gain a little bit of perspective, because he is a guy who has a lot of interests in his world. He does a lot of different things, but it's clear that tennis looks like his number one priority. And so just to see him compete, he's another guy who loved it. So I think all of those young guys, you can tell when they get Shapovalov too. I thought his level continues to show great form. All of these young guys, this is just such a positive experience for them. So I would be in favor of any of those picks.
And I think that's fair. I think for me too, just as a fan of Laver Cup, I'm hoping that it's incredibly impactful for all of these guys. I hope that they're all able to take positive things away from it, because honestly, I think they should be able to, whether it's confidence from a specific win or the team environment itself. understanding that you can get to a certain level if you have a certain amount of investment in it. I mean, that's the biggest thing and then I'll go on a little mini rant of Team World here, because I was talking to you about this. I was talking to Stokoyak about this. I think if you're a member of Team World, and granted, yeah, it's kind of shifting, but there are some stable members, Isner, Sock, Kyrgios. Listen, how do you not take this mentality that you just had and keep it across the season? I know that's difficult. I know it's not the same 3-day period with all the energy, but why, when you're on tour, why aren't you acting like your Team World? Wear the Team World jacket, go to each other's matches. I know Kyrgios does that already because he's friends and buddies with these guys, but act like you're representing that team in every match that you play. Because if you have that mentality, for example, Kyrgios, if you have the mentality that you're representing Team World and it means something for that squad, you're going to have that emotional connection and you're going to be locked in, I think. And so I think that's my biggest thing that I would like to see some Team World members take away. Same thing with Jack Sock. You got to think that the main reason he comes up with that huge win over Fognini is because it's Laver Cup and because it's big time and because he cares, right? Yeah. That's the reason he was able to come up with that win. And so I think things like that, you've just got to be able to take away if you're a Team World member.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. That is why this was such a fun, such a compelling event, because despite there being relatively low stakes in reality, these players cared. Their emotions showed, and it led to a higher quality of tennis. And so, of course, the question becomes, how can you replicate this environment, this sort of enthusiasm and passion for the sport elsewhere? And I think that's something that clearly Laver Cup has made tennis fans, tennis thinkers, people in the ATP and WTA tours think about. And we're going to see reforms, with Hopman Cup gone, ATP Cup in, Davis Cup changing, all these different Fed Cup changing, all these different things that the game continues to adjust. We talk about an award show. Let's make Laver Cup the formal all-star game of the ATP and WTA tours. Let's get women involved in this, because that's one of the great aspects of tennis is you can make it a co-ed sport. We see it in world team tennis, but there are so many different, because of the unique is a strong word, but because of the different aspects of this event than normal, they allow tennis fans to have different opportunities. It allows us to do something like an award show, which you don't get to, wait, what are we going to do an award show after St. Petersburg? Who, most likely to be doing steroids, given that he's made 6 finals in 7 weeks, Daniil Medvedev? Like, is that what we want to do an award show for? I don't think so.
It's a fair award.
That's a joke, it's a joke, by the way. His body's half kinesio tape, right? That really works. But yeah, it's just things like that make this so fun. And by the way, to any listeners who enjoyed this award show or have thoughts on the awards themselves, I believe our social media team is going to be running polls on Twitter, Instagram, at Cracked Racquets is the account name, over the next couple of days to let you, the listeners, vote. We want to know who's the fans' MVP, who is the fans' LVP. All tournament teams. Do you agree with Jamie? Do you like my Fritz pick? Are you a quantitative skills type of person yourself and you focus on the math, the +2 differential? Yeah, if that's your quality, you're going to be with me on this one.
What are you talking about? Nadal and him was a wash, both +2.
Yeah, but Nadal pulled
Fritz
out.
Just had the loss.
Yeah, but Fritz didn't play any doubles. If you throw in Nadal's again, we don't have. Yeah. We just did this, so be on the lookout for that. And to any people who stuck with us throughout this YouTube broadcast, we really appreciate you doing that. I know our super producer, Daniel Westoff, who, again, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and has an F of a job to do, puts a ton of work into this, so we really appreciate all that he does. And we're going to continue to do these video pods, hopefully at least once a week, obviously with the season changing, with it being the home stretch. We'll have different topics each and every week. We still have our most intriguing women's players to watch podcast in the queue on the Great Shot Podcast note, but we've had some great cracked interviews as well. We're getting back into college tennis mode. Estela Perez Somariba, the NCAA women's champion from 2019, the senior at the University of Miami, that'll be coming out this week. Of course, last week we had great interviews as well with Prim Siriprad, with, oh my God, I'm losing track of them now. That's how many good ones there have been. Bethany Maddox-Sands. On the mini break, we had Vicky Duval and Cece Bellis, Vicky Duval and Mackie McDonald. Wednesdays, you get Jamie and Matt Stokoyak, which is always some good stuff, so be on the lookout for that as well. But with that in mind, Jamie, any final thoughts from this year's Laver Cup?
Man, I feel like I've said all I can say about the Laver Cup without just repeating my thoughts. So
we really we extracted all of the juice from these 3 days of tennis.
We really did. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, well then, with that in mind, for my wonderful co-host, James the Time Stickler Foster McDonald, for our super producers, Max Flickner, Daniel Westoff, who continue to have an F of a job to do, and again, hundreds of thousands of dollars, West, of people who see this live show. It's really all him. So, tell him his value, but don't poach him from us, please. But from him, and from everyone else at the Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel podcast networks, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. James Foster, what do we? I believe actually I was about to say that's the break, but as this is a Great Shot podcast, you know what we tell our listeners: hey, great shot, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, everyone.